It doesn't matter if we're talking about the NFL or our out of the box AFC and NFC leagues, because our out of the box offseason is largely synonymous with that of the NFL. We've designed this league to be able to do so. We've evolved this league over time to be synonymous with the NFL because that's the experience that we wanted to give the managers of the league. We wanted to be similar to being a GM of an NFL team. Every team will use their offseason and try to make their team better. So that way they can put themselves in a position to have a higher chance of putting more points on the board and hopefully gaining more wins. The NFL does exactly the same thing. In the offseason, you see multiple trades that happen. They have their NFL draft and they have free agency. In trades, you saw the Dolphins going after Tyreek Hill and the Raiders going after Devontae Adams. In the draft, you saw teams using their draft picks to acquire young, cheap players. In free agency, you saw the Bills sign Von Miller and the Chargers signing J.C. Jackson, all hoping to make their team better for next season to hopefully increase their win total. In the out-of-the-box league, in our AFC and NFC leagues, most managers will use trades to try and improve their team. And it's easy to look at a trade and make a snap decision on who won and who lost the deal. But we're in a 16-team league, and everyone values their players and draft picks differently. But what's often missed is that your team makeup and your future plans for your team plays an often underestimated part of how you value those players. For example, in the NFC, my Bucks team, I don't have a starting quarterback. But for the rest of my team, it's all solid. I might have an increased value on quarterbacks because I lack that positional stability. That'll probably influence my trade talks with other managers. In the AFC, my Browns team has two starting quarterbacks. I have Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So I don't value trading for a quarterback nearly as much, and my price will be much, much lower. Because like I said, we have to remember this is a 16-team league. The NFC teams and the AFC teams, there are 16 teams in both those leagues and 16 different managers in both of those leagues. Every single manager is going to have a different valuation on their draft picks. They're going to have a different valuation on their players. It all depends on their own separate valuation, but also their own team makeup, their own future plans. It's easy to go ahead and look at a trade and say that this team definitely won or this team definitely lost. But more often than not, after a trade goes down, that team or both teams that are involved, they both think that they came across making their team better. And there's definitely trades out there that have occurred where both teams got better based off of what their plans for their teams are. However, the safest way to improve your team in our league, or at least I think the safest way to improve your team in our leagues, is in our auction draft. And our auction draft is quite synonymous to the NFL free agency. Just like the NFL, if there's scarcity at a specific position, odds are those available players at that position will be overpriced. They'll be paid a lot of money. In the NFL draft, there wasn't very many wide receivers available this year. That's why players like Christian Kirk were given $72 million contracts. You saw that in our out-of-the-box auction draft last year, where the winning bids for running backs like Austin Eckler and Aaron Jones were in the $100 to $120 range. Position scarcity will dictate the price. We see it in our leagues just like we see in the NFL. However, overpriced or not, this is the safest way to improve your team. Last year, we were pretty confident in the range of outcomes for players like Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Darren Waller. You had to spend a decent portion of your auction budget to get them, but you roughly knew what you had in that commodity if you came out as the winning bid. Those players immediately went into your starting lineup and you didn't have to think about it. That is not the case with the out-of-the-box rookie draft, which is another way teams will try to improve their team over the offseason. We have no idea what these rookies will do. However, if they hit, then all of a sudden you have a player on a cheaper contract that can help stabilize your team for future years. But if you miss, then you're back to the drawing board. Imagine being the NFL Philadelphia Eagles, drafting Jalen Reagor one spot higher than Justin Jefferson, or being the Las Vegas Raiders and drafting Henry Ruggs over CeeDee Lamb. Those decisions forced the team to take a massive swing for the fence 2 years later, with the Eagles paying a first-round pick and a massive contract to get A.J. Brown, and the Raiders trading a first and a second-round pick on top of the massive contract to get Devontae Adams. Now, imagine being in our out-of-the-box league, and you had the decision between Justin Jefferson or Jalen Reagor. At the time, the value of the 107 and 108 picks might have been roughly the same. But the players that came from those picks, Reagor and Jefferson, were vastly different in hindsight. Jefferson is worth way more than a mid-first round pick, and Jalen Reagor is barely worth a future second, at least at this point in their careers. I spoke to our guest, Jonathan Townley, about this because he made some moves this offseason where he traded his picks away for big-name starting players. He also made some moves to trade back into the draft and grab a rookie on a cheap contract. Stay tuned for the rest of the episode because it was very interesting conversation, and he had some great insights on player and draft pick valuations, especially within our league format. Hey, a lot has already happened with our league this offseason, but a lot is still yet to come, especially with that auction draft. But we've already had our contract increases and extensions. We've dealt with franchise tags. We've had holdout dice rolls for players like Josh Allen and Jonathan Taylor. And most recently, we had our rookie draft. We saw players like Breece Hall and Treylon Burks, or now he wants to be called Treylon Burks. We saw them get drafted. Hopefully for those teams that drafted them, those players turn out to be LaDainian Tomlinson and Randy Moss instead of Trent Richardson and Corey Davis. But who knows? Who's going to be that second-round pick that turns out to be Terry McLaurin or Antonio Gibson from future years? Because every year that happens. Maybe your team was the one who found that diamond in the rough. This is the inaugural episode of The Thing with No Name. And I could not think of a better guest than who we have for you today. So let's get into it. So we have what is it? 3-time runner-up? Did you say? 4-time runner-up.
4
we have
in a row.
4-time runner-up from 2012 to 2016. In the original out-of-the-box leagues itself, where we only had 16 teams, and then we branched off to having 32 teams, and someone who has been a committee member since the beginning, and someone who's been at the beginning of our league since the very beginning, since 2012, Mr. Jonathan Townley.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Great,
Good.
Danny. Thanks for that intro. I feel all accomplished now.
Hey, even though you haven't won and you've been the bridesmaid quite a bit, you probably still won more money than most people in our league, myself included.
That's fair. That's fair. It's although I will tell you, it's each time there has been a discussion between the two finalists that I was there of splitting the pot. And each time my stubborn pride got in the way. As I believe winners should win, right? And I've always said that is winners should win. And if I don't win and I don't win the money, that's fine because I didn't win. I don't deserve the money, right? Like I don't like that. So, and every time I lost, I went, you fool.
It's one of those where if you win, it almost feels like you were right there at the finish line and you just didn't reach the finish line if you didn't take all that money. But if you lose, right, you're just like, I had this opportunity and I just didn't grab it. So I think I would be in the same position as you. I don't think that I would split it myself. But I'd probably be just as disappointed as you finishing second as well also.
It was rough. I was like, all right. And do I know what I'm doing here? I think I do. There are plenty of opponents out there who don't think I do. That's okay. Every now and then I figure it out and have a decent season.
Fair enough. Well, the inaugural winner, the very first winner of our league, isn't even in our league anymore. So
Don, Don. He was a nice guy. I liked him.
He was the Steelers.
Yep.
So if you think about it this way, from the very beginning, you were the highest ranked player in our league from the get go. If you want to look at it that way, maybe that's how I should have introduced you.
Okay, I can live with that. That's strange, but true, I guess. I don't know, man. Joe is one of those people. Like, I think when we first started, and he started trading away players for draft picks and stockpiling draft picks that very first year. I want to say that second year going in, he had like 4 or 5 picks in the first round.
Yep.
Back when there only was one round, I want to say he had like 4 picks, and we all went, what? And I was thinking, you're crazy. There's no way that's going to work. And then, of course, he went on a tear and won like 2 or 3 championships in the next 5 years or so. But
and then he did
his own. We all play it different.
Yeah, and then he did what I think was the biggest winning move of all, in selling his team for over $1,000 to someone who isn't even in our league anymore either.
Maybe it was like 1,400 and change. I went, what?
Yeah.
These things are worth that kind of money. I offered my teams at one point. I'm like, if somebody's going to offer me $1,000 for my teams, I'll sell them right now and I'll buy in again when it comes around.
100%. I would do exactly the same thing. I just don't think there's anyone in our league that would do that anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
I agree with you. That was the coup of the century. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then he immediately rebuilt the 49ers into a contender. Immediately. And the Falcons never made it after that.
Exactly. But this isn't an episode about where we're stroking Joe's ego. This is an episode about, I like to talk about the off season in general for our league.
Okay.
Mainly because we have a lot of new members in our league, especially over the last 2 years, and this is the first time that we're doing an off season that's a real off season. Because the last 2 years we had half of an off season, and then we had the COVID shutdown. And then last year, we had the extra half of the offseason that we didn't do 2 years ago. And so there's a lot of new managers that have been in our league from 2 years ago until now, that this is the very first offseason that they're going to be doing. They either didn't do a rookie draft and they did an auction draft, or they didn't do an auction draft and they did a rookie draft.
That's true.
Or the opposite.
A lot of new faces.
I think I might have just said the same thing twice there, but you know what I meant.
Yeah, I got you.
So in regards to your teams, because you have 2 teams, one in the AFC, one in the NFC, you have the Raiders in the AFC, and you have the Seahawks in the NFC. Without getting into details about your teams yet, because we will do that, how do you usually game plan your offseason? How do you usually go about dealing with the salary increases, franchise tags, and extensions, going into holdouts if you had any, and then going into the rookie draft and auction draft?
Great question. Lot there. As far as holdouts, I love holdouts because it allows you to keep a good player on a cheap contract. I'd rather kill a season, right, or most of the season. I haven't had that very often, but I've had one fairly short and one decent length. Neither of which bothered me. I'll trade for a player on a holdout. That doesn't bother me either. Other owners out there, just because it's worth it to keep a cheap contract. And I think that's what gets lost a lot in our league, is the contract value changes the trade value.
100%.
And it just depends on the owner too. We've had some owners. Rob was notorious, one of the early owners, and to him, a higher price contract value meant a better player. In his mind, when he saw that number and that contract was $50, and he was trading for a player that was contracted $20, well, that $50 player is a better player. And you're going, well, not always. Like, I kind of see it the other way. Like, I'd rather have the $20 player. It frees up $30 in the auction draft. So to me, that $20 player is far more valuable as long as the production is close, right?
That makes sense. I remember Rob. Sorry to interrupt there. I remember Rob partially because he had the Browns team before I had the Browns. And I'm the one who had to deal with all of the high-priced contracts and no first-round picks at all. So I remember my best player was Cam Newton at $75.
Yeah, hey, I remember the first season. I was trying to figure out what this league was and how to do it. I put Peyton Manning on a 3-year contract at the end of his career. And the first year, it almost worked out. Although if I had not played Peyton, I would have won in the championship. But then of course Peyton fell apart and just wasn't the same kind of production anymore. He was still a great quarterback, won the Super Bowl and all that, but he wasn't fantasy viable anymore. And so he was locked in. It's like $70 or something. It was really sad on my part. But yeah, just continuously watching trade movements, things like this year, I did a lot of wide receiver plucking in the AFC, things like Devontae Adams moving, Tyreek Hill moving, all of that stuff, trying to calculate what that's going to mean for them on a production level from fantasy and how much I'm willing to pay. In general, I've talked about, Joe hoarding draft picks, and you're a draft pick hoarder as well, which is cool at times. Not this year in some leagues. I think in the NFC you had almost none. Next year I don't think you have one either. But draft picks are interesting values. At times, they're the most valuable commodity on earth, and you can't pry one away from somebody. And at other times, you can get a draft pick for a mediocre player that might have one good week. So it's really about timing of the value. This year in particular, I traded in to the second round of the AFC draft. I had eschewed. I mean, this offseason, I traded, I think, 6 draft picks away.
Yes, you did.
I just said, no, I don't need the kids, right? I'm going to build. I've got Derek Carr on a cheap contract for a few more years. I need some wide receivers, and I'm going to try and win right now. And so draft picks begin. And so I went about that. And then as I thought about it, I went, I'd really love to pick me up a rookie quarterback, because everybody talks about how the quarterback class isn't that good this year. And I figured I could get one fairly cheaply that would have a chance, right? I mean, to me, draft picks are just crapshoots. I mean, how many, for every surefire draft pick, there's Laviska Shenault, right? Who is maybe, right? He's still got that, like, he might turn that, yay, but, you also could have had somebody else. I also think, and maybe I'm giving away too many secrets here, I think quarterbacks are wildly undervalued in drafts. I think I've drafted Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, and now Malik Willis, right? And I've gotten good value out of those quarterbacks. You know what I mean? When they were playing, if they aren't, assaulting people or, getting into trouble with the league and whatnot. But, so far, Justin Herbert's worked out the best, and I traded away Vic for, I think, a small fortune. Or not Vic, Lamar Jackson for a small fortune.
Yeah, you got CD Lamb and Cam Akers in that trade.
Which I think I've subsequently traded to you. So you got a small fortune out of me drafting Lamar Jackson.
Well, it all goes around because I'm the one who traded you that draft pick for you to draft Lamar Jackson.
That's true.
I did a Rob where I needed a wide receiver, so I traded you that late round pick that turned out to be Lamar Jackson, and I got T.Y. Hilton, who was 28 years old, I believe, at the time, on his $69 contract.
Yep.
So, and you're here saying maybe Laviska Shenault can turn out well, and I'm the one who drafted him in both those leagues, the AFC and the NFC. I drafted him in the AFC, and I traded up to get him in the NFC. You're 100% right. Draft picks seem like the best option because you get an up-and-coming player who everyone only thinks of the upside. No one ever thinks of the downside of a rookie pick. Everyone thinks of the upside for those rookie picks. And they're on a cheap contract. And if you look at the teams in our league that are good, they're the teams that have good young players on cheap contracts. And the rookie draft is one of the best spots to get it because the auction drafts, more often than not, similar to free agency in the NFL, they're usually overpriced. If you look at Kenny Golladay in the real NFL, He was the best wide receiver that was available, so the Giants paid him what, like $19 million a season, which now looks like a steal compared to what Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill are getting. But he's also only Kenny Golladay, and so
Right.
you look at our rookie draft, sorry, our auction draft, and if there's only a couple top tier or at least wide receiver 2 type players available, and you have 16 teams that are bidding on them, odds are that player is going to go overpriced. And that's where like the rookie draft can become valuable. But then if you look at the first round picks, even just a couple years ago, Justin Jefferson and Jalen Reagor went back to back.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I took Jalen Reagor.
Yeah. There you go. So you can have a massive hit, but you can also just completely torpedo your team. And it's not just that you didn't take Justin Jefferson and you took Jalen Reagor, but I'm going to assume that over the 3 years that you've owned that pick, there have been many times where people have tried to trade you a valuable player, a starting player for that pick, and you probably declined.
Yes.
And everyone has.
Yeah, and you went, no, because the potential is too good. I can find somebody amazing. I got Jalen Reagor.
Exactly.
Crap.
And so, like a really good example is if you look at, and I don't want to put anyone on notice, but if you look at Christian McCaffrey in our league, he in our AFC league he's $81 on a 2-year contract. That is a very inflated contract, and it's not just a 1-year contract because you have to own him and have that $81 come off your salary cap for those 2 years. This year going into the auction draft and then next year, and that's a lot. But at the same time, it's Christian McCaffrey. If he's healthy, he's going to be in your starting lineup no matter what. And $81 sounds like a lot, but that's less than 20% of your total salary cap. And it's a very real possibility that during the season, you can say, hey, I'll give you my first round pick for this overpriced Christian McCaffrey. And that owner, whoever, like right now Chris owns them in the AFC, but if you put Christian McCaffrey on anybody's team, odds are they accept that trade. They will take that first round pick for an $81 Christian McCaffrey. And if that first round pick turns out to be Jalen Reagor, that's a massive blunder for anyone not accepting that trade, knowing that that's Christian McCaffrey. So I feel like it can go the opposite way too, where people overvalue the hype of rookie picks and what it could be, and they undervalue what a good player on a high contract could do for your team.
Right. Agreed. And that's why, like I said, when you really look at the activity I've done in the draft, for the most part, I'll exit a draft or I'll exit the first round. And then if I see somebody falling, I'll try and trade back in. Right. And then I'll start hounding people and offering them terrible offers until one of them takes me up on it. But in general, like the Lamar Jackson draft, I was out of that draft too. And I traded back in. I want to say I traded in two different people and got 2 picks out of that draft. Lamar Jackson and I forget who else.
You might have. I only remember the Lamar Jackson one just because I lost that trade.
Well, again, and at the time I was like, man, this guy's a crapshoot. Who knows, right? And then he turned out to be an MVP, and I was able to leverage that and make something out of it. But it's one of those things that's I've done that many times where I just said, no, draft picks aren't really where it's at right now. And they're valuable right now. They are really not that valuable week 6. Week 6 draft picks aren't very valuable at all. You're trying to win. You're trying to say, gosh, I'm 4-2. Am I going to get over this hump and get ahead of Will or whoever else, is there, David, right? And so your draft pick 2 years from now, you're going, I don't give 2 shakes about this dude, right? Or who it could possibly be 2 years from now, doesn't matter. But come March, the draft pick is the most valuable thing you have. So when you trade draft picks and when you allocate that resource becomes really important because, that's when people are looking at it going, this holds value to me right now. And you're going to get more for your draft picks before, in the month before the rookie draft. Than you are mid-season. Mid-season, that's when you're gonna hold on to your existing good contracted players That's what I'm seeing.
No, you're 100% right, and I think that's good for a lot of the new owners to know. And the hard thing is all the new owners in our league, to even accept an invitation to our league, they have to be good already. Like, we're going under the assumption that they're good at fantasy football because no one wants to join our league with how complex it is if they're just mediocre at best.
Because this is not the rookie leagues. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't want to go under. I don't want to say that because they're a new owner, they might need a little bit of help. But because of how complex our league is, I think it is good to remind them of that, because you're right. If you're looking at rebuilding a team, because most new owners, when they're coming into the league, the team is a bit of a rebuild. No one just gives up a good team and then gives it away for free in our league. It doesn't seem like anyway. And so if they're trying to rebuild and they're looking at getting draft picks, like you said, week 6 is the best time to get them. You can trade a wide receiver 3 who, like a Marvin Jones. You can trade him away for like a second round pick, or potentially, depending on injuries of that team at that time, a first round pick in a future year, and gain the value of those picks at that point, because like you said, they're overinflated. Like, the rookie picks are overpriced in March and April when we see the NFL draft happen, and then we have our rookie picks come up, and you can either take that pick and take the chance that it's either going to be a Justin Jefferson or a Jalen Reagor, or capitalize on trading that draft pick for something else, for, let's say, a Christian McCaffrey type player if you wanted to.
Right, exactly. And for someone, it's one of those things. Wide receivers are very highly valued in these leagues because there are so few that are top end that are going to give you consistent production. And consistent production is the name of this game. And I have routinely, throughout this entire league, in every fantasy football league, I'm not big on wide receivers. I'm a running back and quarterback guy. Give me the right running back, quarterback, tight end, right? And I'll make do with the mediocre wide receivers I have. So this is kind of an interesting change for me in the AFC, because I've branched out and gotten pretty much every wide receiver that I could get my hands on, because I wanted that stable, because I was looking at what was happening and what was coming out. And there's a young crop of wide receivers, which I don't have because I don't have a lot of draft picks, or at least I didn't have them stockpiled in the right way, and I didn't draft them right before. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out. Well, of course, I'm a huge Raider fan, so getting Devontae Adams was like key. I had to have him on the Raiders, right? It was so important to me. But Paul offered me a couple of veteran guys that I thought, what a stable, right? I've got to have. I mean, I know Russ is gone, but Tyler Lockett still going to put up some numbers with Drew Lock, right? Just these guys that aren't, when you look at the names, you don't go, ooh, sexy, right? You go, okay, but those guys are going to produce, and I've got enough depth of injury. Again, I'm trying to win this year. If I don't win next year, I'll deal with that next year. This year in the AFC, I'm really going for try to knock it out this year. It's a stiff competition. And so, getting that stable of wide receivers, if one of my guys goes down, knowing that I've got a guy of the caliber of Tyler Lockett to step in as that alternate, going all in for, upgrading my running back, from Josh Jacobs to Dalvin Cook. I'm hoping Dalvin Cook, of course, stays healthy, but if he doesn't, got Josh Jacobs, right, to step in and be that guy. And so kind of pushing all my chips in on this particular year, hoping that Derek Carr will have another career year now that Tay's there. But, just kind of saying that was my big missing piece in that, was having that wide receiver stable that could really make it. Again, is it CeeDee Lamb? No. Traded CeeDee Lamb. Is it some of the other big names that maybe I think should have held on to that, right? No, but I'll take them, and they'll do just fine. They'll fill that gap where I'm not losing games because of my wide receiver room being so poor. And that's really what it's about.
And that's where it's really interesting for you, because like you said, you've always had really good teams, but you've always had like a wide receiver 2 as like your best wide receiver. You've always had really, really stable running backs, really stable quarterbacks, and you've always found a tight end somehow. That's why I've been trying to go after Dalton Schultz from you for a little while now. But your wide receiver room has always been good enough.
Golden Tate.
Exactly.
Yeah, just guys like that. They go, okay, they'll get you by. They'll get you 15, maybe 16 if you're lucky, 20, but not consistent.
There you go. But this year, like you said, so just for everyone who doesn't know, Tyler Lockett, Brandon Cooks were the 2 guys that you got from Paul, because Paul wanted to rebuild, and so you gave up a 2023 first. I think you got a couple seconds in that deal too, but you took on some.
Yeah, I had to give up a second as well, I think.
Yeah,
but
so you gave up some salary cap space to get players who probably who have name value now, but maybe their situation isn't as good. Tyler Lockett without Russ, Brandon Cooks in Houston, but you know that those are guys that you can put in your lineup and they'll get you those points that you need with the team that you have around you. And then you add in Davante Adams, and all of a sudden your team is a massive contender. And it looked like on paper you gave up a lot for Davante Adams, but in all actuality you might not have. You gave up 2 firsts, but they're 2 late firsts. Like they were the 114 and the 115, and in our draft, that was John Mechie and Alec Pierce. Who knows what they're going to do? They're going to be phenomenal players on their contracts if they hit, but we don't know what they're going to be. They're not the Breece Hall of this year. They're secondary pieces that you hope turn out, but you have absolutely no idea, and I don't think any of us do. And you gave up a couple second round picks as well, like late seconds, to get Davante Adams, and again, who knows what they're going to be either. So you gave up those 4 picks. None of them might turn out, but you got Davante Adams at a $55 contract that completely stabilizes your team, and you add that in with Dalvin Cook, which in hindsight now looks like the perfect trade for you based off of what you did with your wide receivers, because people can argue who won that trade. I think it's a very even trade, in my opinion, because it was you and I that actually made that trade. You gave up Cam Akers and a second, and you got Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook is by far the better player right now and the more stable player right now. I think Cam Akers is probably the biggest wild card going into this season for running backs. And with the wide receivers that you got and the fact that you have the quarterback play already, getting a more stable running back to add with Josh Jacobs, I think makes sense.
Agreed. And, it's interesting. We've brought that up a couple of times of who won the trade. And it's interesting. Sometimes you see that, and I see trades that happen that obviously don't involve me, and I go, why in the hell? Okay. Right. I don't understand why somebody would trade that away for that, but all right. But in general, I don't try to win trades, right? There are times where you go, okay, I see that value is higher than you. And maybe it's not the same, but I really fretted giving away Cam Akers. I've held Cam Akers through the injury, and I was just clutching my pearls with him, and I didn't want to let him go. And it took a Dalvin Cook for me to even consider it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, there was no way in Hades I was letting Cam Akers go. He was going to be my main back. So, if you start looking at who won, well, geez. I mean, what does that mean anymore? Right? There have been plenty of trades where I guess after the fact I looked and went, I think I got fleeced here. I think I should have held to my guns and gotten more out of whatever. And then that guy goes and gets injured or turns out to be a dud or, I traded Jalen Reagor for Rondale Moore. Who won that trade? Who knows, right? What's Rondale Moore going to be? Neither one of them are doing jack squat right now, and Rondale Moore's on a $50 contract or whatever, 54 in the NFC. And it's well, maybe it's a maybe. I'm less confident I'm a more confident. But one, I don't know. Very few trades get won because like you talked about the underlying assets. If John Mechie turns out to be a Hall of Famer, I lost, right? But did I really? If I win the Super Bowl this year because of Davante Adams, did I lose the trade? So there's a little bit of eye of the beholder stuff. There have been a couple of head scratchers, no doubt, when you see trades. And you wonder where people have value. Like I said, Rob valued higher priced players as better players. Some people value draft picks very highly. David, for example, refuses to trade his first round draft picks. Like, you need a crowbar and a blowtorch to get a first round draft pick out of David.
Yep. But the guy's in the Super Bowl every single year.
Darn right. You know what I mean? So he knows what he's doing. And he has his philosophy and he sticks to it. So knowing the owners and the team and how they operate and what they want, that's really important, and you've traded with me enough to know I'm pretty open trader. Like, there's guy, and I'll tell you, no, back off. You ain't getting that guy. Like, I'm sorry. Just don't ask. Right. And there's the answer that I dread every time I ask for somebody bigger. It's going to take a king's ransom to get that guy. And you go, oh, geez. All right. Just say no. Just say no. I don't want to trade him. Like, that's fine. Because I'm not going to give you 5 first rounders. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't give 5 first rounders for Devontae Adams. I think that's what he asked me for at first, too. Tanner was shrewd, man. Tanner's got like 100 draft picks in the next 3 years. He's got them all. I think he's got 5 or 6 in 2024. Like, it's ridiculous. It's awesome. Good for him. But then the question becomes, what's he going to do with them? Is he really going to draft 5 players? Maybe. Or is he going to look to find the value in those somewhere in the season? Right.
Exactly. And you know what? Good for him. If he's going to ask for 5 first round picks, there's 15 other members in our league. Maybe someone bites. Who knows? Maybe someone says, no, I don't want to give up 5 first, but I'll give you 3. And someone else says, maybe I'll give you 4. And then he came to a deal with you, and who knows? Maybe that's a trade that works out for both of you. Because what if one of those picks hits? Then now all of a sudden he has a guy that hits on a really cheap contract, but you, wanting to win this year, you have Devontae Adams.
Right. So, and that's what I'm saying. It's an eye of the beholder situation. And I always try to find in trades something that is valuable to both teams. Right. Like, because I always try to put myself in the other shoes. Why would I do this deal? Right. Even though at first, that first offer might be a little shy, right? Knowing the negotiation's going to happen. But, think, okay, what if I had Devontae Adams, what would it take to get him from me? Right? If I had, Dalton Schultz, what would it take to get him from me? Okay. Right. And really, you have to know that person. I know some of the things you value. And so trading with you, we can usually find a common ground that makes sense. Like going into this negotiation with Tanner, I haven't traded with Tanner a whole lot. So trying to figure out where his value really lied, things like, seeing, and I guess just jumping back, we talked about, things getting overvalued in the auction draft. Tight ends, for example, are one of those. So when somebody offered me Dalton Schultz on an $11 contract, there wasn't much I wasn't willing to pay for that, right? He's a top tier guy, right? Maybe a high second tier guy on an $11 contract. What's not to love there? Yeah, because if he was in the auction draft, I'd have to pay $92 to get him in this league 100%. Anymore. So, forget it. I'll take him. What do you want? First round pick? A second? Sure, go ahead. Right? Whatever. Right? Because I can't replace him with, whatever the hot tight end was. There was a guy a couple years ago, Cole Kmet. Like, That's not going to do it. Like, you can have him, right? But give me the guy who's going to be $11 and produce for me. Now hopefully, of course, he can sit out all freaking season, but that's a different issue.
Right. So. But those are the risks that you have to take. I think that makes complete sense. And you're right. When it comes to trades, everyone likes to look at it and say who won, but it really depends on your team, because we could, like, if you look at the Dalvin Cook for Cam Akers in the second trade, I could argue we both made our teams better with that trade. Yep. In the AFC, I have an abundance of running backs, and so it was a better deal for me to trade one of my older established running backs and go for a really high risk but really high reward younger running back. So I knowing that if Cam Akers doesn't hit, I'm still fine. Like, I'm not making my team worse. But if Cam Akers does hit, then at least I have him for probably more years than what Dalvin Cook will produce because of the age difference. But if you look at your team, it makes sense. If you have Josh Jacobs as like your number one running back, if you can stabilize that with Dalvin Cook with the rest of your team, that also makes sense. I think we both put ourselves in a position where we can get a couple extra wins. And that's usually what the goal of a trade is. You're trying to win a couple extra more games.
Right.
So I think that
exactly right.
So I think that made sense for both of our teams, and I think it's easy to look at other trades and say, oh, well, this person won or that person won, but it's hard to do that without putting yourself in their position, seeing what they have on their team, and not knowing what their future plans are.
Right. Right. And again, you never know. You get a homer, like me. I'm a Raiders homer. It's hard to, it's hard not to, for me to not take a Raider sometimes. It's like, oh, I'll give you this Raider player. It's like, but he's not good. And sometimes you'll find those niches with people that just have a value. They're really high on a player, right? And that's going to change the value even when you're not, and I'm pretty coy about players I'm not very high on my team. I won't tell you I'm not very high on them, but I'll just wait for that offer to come around and go, geez, I don't know, right? And then go, sure, yeah, I'll give them up for something. But, things like Cam, I was huge on. Like, I thought Cam was the future. I mean, you tried to get Cam before that even. I think a year ago, before the injury, you tried to get Cam, and I said, no way, Jose. I'm not trading him to you. I'm not giving him away. He's the future for me because I saw his potential. But, yeah, I agreed. I think you just got to do what's best for your team for this year, and what's best for your team this year for you is to get younger. You need to get younger so that you can sustain. I mean, it's not as if you were a slouch in the AFC last year. You were kicking ass and taking names. So, getting a little younger is going to help you sustain that. Plus, adding in that second round pick that can be traded or picked. You know what I mean? Helps you to add value to your team as well. So, and who knows? Dalvin Cook might play, 15 minutes this year and get wrecked. Exactly. You never know, right? So, I mean, every bit's a crapshoot, and you just kind of got to figure it out and do the best you can to add wins to your team. So, yeah.
Or Cam Akers' Achilles is just as brittle as everyone thought it was. Who knows? But there's some interesting things that are happening for your team in the NFC too. You made some trades. You increased some of the value of your team, not necessarily to the same extent as the big name players in the AFC. But you got DJ Chark, Miles Sanders that we made a trade on, Irv Smith, Kenny Pickett. Like you said, you wanted to go in on a rookie quarterback this year, but you have Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I have a question about that. It's more so you have Deshaun Watson ...
Yeah. Well, that's where I'm at too. Is what does that mean? I don't even know because I've held him through all of this, knowing that the value would come around, and it did for a little while. There was some trade value in him with the hype and going to Cleveland, and now with the new allegations. Like, I don't think there's much of a market for him, which is fine. I don't need to trade him. I'm happy benching him because I have Justin Herbert.
Exactly.
So Justin Herbert's my number one. Deshaun Watson, whenever he starts playing football again, and I always think of this, and, I, as moral of a human being as I try to be on a day-to-day basis, when you have athletes and actors and, musicians that do allegedly terrible things, or allegedly do terrible things, there's that a bit of a morality clause. You're like, now with this guy, let's jettison him and let's move on. I don't want him on my team. And then the other part of me goes, that's not what this is about, right? If the guy's a scumbag, the guy's a scumbag. If, when he'll pay his due, or not, or whatever, that's not for me to decide. Right. But if he's going to get on the football field again, when he was on there, he was a top 5 player. I'm not just going to throw him away, for nothing. So he's going to hold value. So I'll probably hold him until whatever is finalized with him is finalized, just because I don't think anybody would offer me enough to move his potential without knowing. Because why would you offer that much for somebody in his position? He may never play football, right? He might not.
I think that's the only play you have. I think with the type of player that he is, the upside that he gives you because we're not in a super flex league, but we are in a 16 team league. And so we can't value quarterbacks, or at least I don't think that we can value quarterbacks the same as a single quarterback 12 team league. We don't have that waiver wire of quarterbacks that we can go to like you do. Like there's no such thing as a streaming quarterback in our league.
No. No.
So a guy like Deshaun Watson, the type of player that he is extremely valuable. And if you're getting an offer for a 2024 second round pick just for Deshaun Watson, like what's the point? What's the point in that? Odds are you're going to trade that pick away anyway. It's going to be a toss-in just to get a deal done. And so with fantasy football, you don't get negative points for having a scumbag on your team.
That's right.
You don't get positive points because someone donated to charity. And just because someone's not in the news doesn't mean that they're not a scumbag. These are all like young professional athletes that have gotten money at an early age. Odds are there's a decent amount of scumbags in there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I still remember the tales of Michael Irvin back in the day getting busted for cocaine at the airport.
There you go.
And now he's on ESPN every day. You know what I mean? He's celebrated and people love him. It's like, dude, this is a coke addict, right? How is this guy the pariah? How are we holding this guy up? But, you forgive people and you move on and, nobody's perfect. And, what happened with Deshaun and these women, nobody knows, right? Yeah. Except Deshaun and these women. I mean, it sounds bad and it gets worse every day, but you're right. You don't get negative points for holding a scumbag on your team. Otherwise, we might all be screwed.
Exactly. I have Tyreek Hill on my AFC team, and he's going in my starting lineup.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna decrease Deshaun Watson's value just because morally you don't want him on your team, sure, that's fine. There's going to be someone else in our league that wants him if he plays. Yep. But if he doesn't play, then he's worth absolutely nothing. But you're right. I think the only play here is to just hold on to him. I don't think anyone's going to want to trade for him, but you have the luxury of having Justin Herbert. In the NFC, I don't have a quarterback on my team. My only quarterback is Taylor Heineke. And so that's why I offered you some deals, and I offered you some pretty extensive deals. I was, in my opinion, overpaying because I don't value quarterbacks as high as you do. And so I was looking at it as I'm overpaying because I need a quarterback. I don't have a quarterback on my team. Jonathan has a surplus. And that's one of the reasons why you potentially hold on to these guys is because this happens and you're like, I'm fine because I have Justin Herbert that I can put in my lineup.
Right. Or I don't have any issue holding. I think there's a couple of years I held 4 quarterbacks going into the league, knowing, hey, you know what? That means somebody's short and somebody's going to make me an offer, right?
There you go.
And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Or, I mean, how many times have you had? I've had 3 quarterbacks and they're all hurt.
Yep.
Every single one of them, you're going, why did I? All right, or you have these guys on a contract from last year and this year, you're holding 2 quarterbacks going in and they both have the same bye week. And now you're stuck trying to get a Drew Lock and you're having to pay a second round pick to get him because you don't have any other options. And if you don't get him, you're almost certainly going to lose this week. But if you get him, you're not even sure you're going to bother winning. So is it worth it for that one win or, you know what I mean? And it's all those kind of decisions that come up that just grind you. So if you have a surplus at quarterback, it's almost always better because you just never know, what's going to happen to one of them, not even barring what's happening with Deshaun Watson. But yeah, and agreed. That's where we talked about finding value. I value quarterbacks far more highly than you do. And so the offers you were making, I didn't think were overpaying. And I thought for Deshaun Watson's value, he carried more.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't about, gosh, I don't want to trade him to Danny, or I think Danny's lowballing me or anything like that. It was just that, no, I think his value is higher than that. And I don't think Danny sees his value as higher than that. And so right now, I don't think that's going to work. And then in hindsight, you're probably very glad that didn't work out at the time.
Definitely.
And at the same time, but I'm not put out by it. At the same time, I'm not going, God, I really wish I'd pulled that deal with Danny because then I'd have this and I wouldn't have to deal with it. I go, I've been holding him all this time. I can keep holding him. It's not going to hurt my team any. He's on an $11 contract, so he's not even.
He's pretty cheap.
He's not even a burden.
I don't have him in front of me, but yeah, that's part of the reason why I was going after him, because he had a cheap contract. It wasn't going to hurt the salary cap going into the auction draft.
Right. And that's where, with my value on quarterbacks, I see, gosh, a cheap contract, a top 5 player if he plays. There's a crapshoot that's going to drive the value down. But I mean, if he was a definite, let's say all these women settled this thing and it got taken off the table and the NFL said we're not doing anything, he's playing week 1 this year. That dude carries, in my opinion, a bucket of value,
100%.
Right? In talent, in starting for a team that's, the Browns were in the, divisional round a couple years ago. They're, the Browns aren't a terrible team. They're a terrible organization, but they're not a terrible team, this year, especially when you add that higher level of quarterback than Baker Mayfield in there. And not knocking Baker. Baker, I still think he's a talented kid. But I'm also a big believer that the talent level in the NFL is marginal. You know what I mean? Like the difference between Tom Brady and the 4th string quarterback on the Cardinals isn't all that high. It's not about talent. They're all very talented. It's about work ethic, situation, experience. There's a lot of other things.
Football
but
IQ.
We've seen so many.
Football IQ.
Football IQ. There's all those other intangibles. But talent, people gave Devontae Adams a bunch of crap because he equated Derek Carr to Aaron Rodgers talent-wise. And it's like, no, that's not wrong. Talent-wise, they're pretty close. Aaron Rodgers is far more accomplished. Aaron Rodgers has more magic in his arm, right? But talent-wise, nah. I would say there's not big a difference. I mean, who was the most talented quarterback to ever play the game? Who knows? One could argue it was Jamarcus Russell.
That's what I was going to mention.
That dude has talent pouring out his butt, and he could do anything. He had a cannon arm. He could pinpoint accurate at times, and he just flamed out, right? Talent wasn't the problem. It never was with him. It was work ethic. He didn't care to do it because they gave him $60 million. He went, I'm the king of the world. I don't have to do anything. And he flamed out real fast. And so, talent, what's talent? They're all talented. I mean, these are the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1% of human beings on the planet. So, but it's fit, it's scheme, it's a football IQ, it's all that stuff, and so we'll see, you know what I mean? And every year, everybody walks in thinking there's this one guy who's going to be amazing because he was amazing last year, and he isn't. Or the one guy who sucks because he sucked last year and he doesn't. And so, every year it's kind of interesting to see what happens and who gets overvalued in fantasy. Because there's also like a Tom Brady who most years in fantasy is not that great. He's okay, right? But of course he's Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Like in the real world, he's incredibly valuable. Fantasy, hit or miss, right?
I'm with you on that. It's hard to sit on your couch and we all do it. We all sit on our couch and we say, "Oh, this guy's terrible. Why did he make that play?" But we're the ones sitting on our couch with a beer on our stomach and judging these guys. But you're right. I think Deshaun Watson's a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. But Baker Mayfield was able to get the Browns to the playoffs and in a really good position in the playoffs. If Deshaun Watson doesn't play, and we assume that Baker Mayfield probably won't play, the Browns are probably going to be a bad team. Even though if you throw either of those guys back on the team, that's a contender. Yeah. Probably more with Watson than Baker, but
agreed.
But that's there. And then when we look at our fantasy leagues, Deshaun Watson, if he plays, is very, very valuable.
Yes.
How do you feel? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
How do you feel about your teams going into the auction draft now? Because you made a lot of moves already. Do you plan on making any others? And I'm going to guess you're not going to give specifics. But but if you wanted to do something with your teams before the auction draft, what would you plan on doing?
Well, both teams are in kind of a different spot, So in the NFC, I'm still fairly shy on wide receivers. I've got some young, some question marks versus my old grizzled veterans in the AFC, right? So a wide receiver would be something that would perk my ears anyway. Go, oh, okay. Well, what is it you're asking for that? No, not worth it. Or yeah, okay. So that would be something worth discussing in the NFC. Um, in the AFC, I don't know, right? Like I'm kind of set where I want to be. I don't think there's anything else that I'm not actively pursuing anything on either league, to be honest with you right now. I've kind of taken a little step back in hiatus because I made a lot of moves this offseason. Just to say, okay, I think I'm set, ready to go for the draft. But both teams are going to have a slightly different philosophy. I have a much younger, much more sparse team in the NFC than I do in the AFC. And so I think I only have $60, $64 in the AFC. So it's not like I'm going to be a big player there either. And I've got a ton of money. I got 300 some odd dollars in the NFC. So that's where you're going to see a lot more bids coming out of me in one league than the other. Just to try and bulk out that roster and get some talent behind Justin Herbert to really make it play. Because I'm stacked in running backs in that league too, right? With Antonio Gibson and Miles Sanders, I'm sitting pretty. And then I have the luxury of hanging on to Chris Carson if he ever plays again at $1. Okay, I'll take him, right? Who's going to trade for him? It's a similar situation. He may never play again.
Exactly.
But if he comes back, he's a starter. He's a starter quality running back, for $1. So, but I have the luxury of holding on to him. So wide receivers, again, it's no big secret. Everybody targets wide receivers, but that's probably my biggest need in the NFC is just hitting up some wide receivers. And, if I see, deals, I'm a big deals guy. Like it's hard. Like I probably, with the new way we've drafted, I contract out of a lot of guys. Like as it starts to go, and I'm like, all right, I'll pay $60 for that guy. Like I don't want to, but I will. And then I look down and it's $78, and I'm like, forget it. And then you find out later that probably $80 you probably would have been okay, right? But I have a hard time pulling the trigger at some of those higher numbers, and maybe that's a flaw in me. I just can't. I don't see the value, until after the fact, and then it's tough, and that's everybody, I think, a little bit. But like looking at Jamar Chase on the $100 contract, right? I'll take that. I'll take that any day, any day. Come on, bring it, right? Jamar Chase on a $100 contract. I don't want to pay him $100, but hell, he's worth it.
If it means having Jamar Chase on your team, then yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because then you get Jamar Chase, right? But but Austin Eckler for $100, like for me, that one was overpriced for me for a running back. I wouldn't pay that much, and I bowed out of that, even though I probably could have used him right back when that happened. Definitely could use him. He's a great running back, but I can't see paying quite that much for a running back. But again, and for most wide receivers, what if that had been Jalen Reagor? Right? No, then you're really screwed. But Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase, thank God. For oh gosh, who's got him in the NFC? Ron?
I don't know who has him in the NFC.
Who's the Giants? Is that Ron?
No. Ron used to have the Giants, but I think Chris took it.
No.
Chris D.
No, it's not the Giants. They're Redskins. Or the
yes,
the
Commanders. Yes, yeah. He's that's Ron. Ron took over that team.
That's Ron. Yeah. Ron, so Ron's got him, and I've made a couple of overtures to Ron, and Ron's told me to kick rocks, of course, like he should, because it's Jamar Chase. Like don't come knocking at Jamar Chase. So Ron, when you're listening, I'm not knocking you for saying no, right? Obviously, but Ron values him very highly, even though like you look at his cap number, he's upside down, right? Yep. And it's like you could move him and open up $100 in cap space, which is huge for him going in. But rightly so, he's saying, no, I'll trade heaven and earth to keep this guy, right? Which is fine. But it's one of those situations where a wide receiver is gonna probably be my number one. Like I said, any good deals, and defensive players are always weird, in the draft because they don't add a lot. And the difference between the number 1 guy and the number 20 guy isn't that big. But, I'll tend to find those guys that I go, all right, I like him. You know what I mean? And, I think they'll be productive. You can look at the stats, but it's really hard to tell with defensive players on IDPs. And so for the most part, I kind of go with guys I think are going to be on good defenses, going to get those opportunities against teams that are throwing a lot, and go that way. But and I will pay for defense if I think I like the guy. You pay for a JJ Watt, you'll pay for a Khalil Mack, things like that, just because the name's there and it's hard not to. You know what I mean? It's hard to go, God, but it's JJ Watt. It's like, yeah, but he's not what he used to be. So yeah, nothing in particular. Like I said, in the AFC, I don't have a whole lot of needs. My team's pretty well flashed out, just depth and defense. In the NFC, wide receivers, and some more bench, some depth just to make sure injuries don't rack me up. Do I need to go after another quarterback? No. Will I? Maybe.
I think everyone will. If you have 3 quarterbacks in your team, it's hard not to go after a quarterback if you think that the value's there. But you're right. It's hard not to plan for the auction draft, because outside of the rookie draft, it's the next best way to get guys on your team. And if you're a contender, it is the best way to get some guys on your team. And we all look at who's available. And because we are in what Paul likes to say, like kind of like a half dynasty, half startup each year, like we don't have 23 keepers on our team.
Right.
But there's not a lot of guys in the auction draft. But there's some for managers to go after, and odds are they get overpriced. But everyone looks at that same player, and everyone's thinking in their head, I have X amount of dollars to spend. I think I could try to get this player, and I can try to get this player, and I can try to get this player. Odds are you're getting one of them. You're not getting all 3, because
right, exactly.
The other 15 managers that are in that draft room are all thinking the same thing. So if you think that you can get player X for $60, odds are they're going for 85.
Yep.
And it's hard to wrap your head around that, but at the same time, if you're stuck on that, I want this guy for $60 and that's what I'm willing to pay, sure, if you might be smart in doing so, because then you save your money for someone else. But if you think you're going to get them for $60, you're going to get them for 85.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat there and go, okay, fine, player A, B, or C, I'm good with any of those guys. And I'm looking at player F going, crap, what do I do now? Exactly. Right? Like, those guys are all gone. They all overpriced me because I was stuck on a number, right? Mm-hmm. And, it makes it difficult.
No, it happens to all of us. I think that's where Aaron in the NFC, the Rams, I don't talk to him very much, but I'm going to go with the assumption that I don't think he plans for the auction draft too much. And in that 1 year, he got all the best players, and he won the league that year.
Yep.
And so it very well could be that we all planned beforehand and had a certain price in mind. It went over that price, and he grabbed up all the best players and then won the league.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to saying maybe there's a little bit too much over planning and being stuck on a number.
Yeah, agreed. And I think my best drafts are when I don't do that as much and just kind of let it flow. And when I see a cheap deal, try to get in on that guy and hope, you don't get outbid too heavily.
Exactly.
Or get into too much of an escalation war. But yeah.
Well, everyone, you heard it here. If you have an extra wide receiver in the NFC, send Jonathan a message. I can tell you right now, though, you're not gonna swindle him on a deal. It's hard to do that. Anything else that you'd like to say to the rest of the league before we sign off?
No, I love this though. This was fun. I like this idea. I look forward to hearing the other podcasts as you meet with other of the owners and hear some of their insights. And hopefully for some of the new guys, this was helpful, and for everybody, it was fun just to kind of chat and hear the chat and think, oh, okay, now I know more about this guy. Right. And, maybe that helps you in a trade later, or maybe that helps you in the league, or just to get to know the people that this league isn't just a casual, oh, there it is from time to time. And there are some owners that treat it that way, but you know what I mean. It's hard because you make a connection. You know what I mean, like with some of these guys like Paul and you and Joe, and you make a connection with these people who are in your life for 12 months out of the year. Like there's no off season in this league, right? There's no downtime here. Every time I think, all right, I'm going to put this away for a little while, then that email comes along. Hey, Danny wants to talk about trade. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll think about it now, right? Like, oh, William wants to. Oh, okay, let's talk. Okay, Tanner wants. Oh, okay, there's a new guy in the league. Oh, okay, let's. All right, and all of a sudden it's like, I was going to take this month off and not think about football. Nope, right? Like now this is my heaviest month yet. You know what I mean? So I hope this is fun. I would love to hear more of them. I'd like to hear some other owners and hear what they have to say too. But yeah, I love this, Danny, and I'll join your podcast anytime. I hope this is fun. I would love to hear more of them. I'd like to hear some other owners and hear what they have to say too. But yeah, I love this, Danny, and I'll join your podcast anytime.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My hope is that the audio works. I have it screen recording, but I'm not a tech guy. I'm not good at that kind of stuff. So fingers crossed that when I play it back and I listen to it, you're not just hearing like my coffee mug smacking against like the table, or me fiddling around with like my computer, or like my wife just walked by getting some paper towel. I'm hoping that like the rustling of that didn't drown out anything else, but fingers crossed it works. It's going out there either way. So
yeah.
So like I said in the teaser, is it going to be good quality? More than likely not. But is it going to be fun? You're damn right.
What's up, Danny?
How are you doing?
Good. Tired.
Well, yeah, no doubt. It's 6 a.m. for you.
Which is normally not a problem, but we stayed up. My son and I stayed up last night, and I showed him Big Trouble in Little China for the first time. So that was a fun moment.
Big Trouble Little China? What's that?
Oh, Danny, you haven't lived, sir. That is a 1980s Kurt Russell movie.
Okay.
It's a John Carpenter film. It's I don't know how to describe it. It's watch that film. Okay. Do yourself a huge favor. Watch that film. It's ridiculous. Don't expect high quality art film. It's ridiculous, but it is worth every minute.
Interesting. I don't think I've watched a single new movie in like 2 years. Or like a movie that I haven't watched myself in 2 years.
Oh wow! Okay.
Well,
you've been a bit busy, sir.
Little bit, yeah. I just got to the point where I was able to watch a brand new TV show on like Netflix, Crave, like one of those, for the first time in 2 years. And so like I have like a big list of shows that I want to watch, and so I'm just nailing them out one by one right now.
Right on.
So I'm behind on a lot of that stuff.
Well, luckily this isn't too long. This is only like 90, 95 minutes or something. So
there you go.
Huge time commitment, but I highly recommend this. This is probably, just for pure entertainment, this is probably a top 10 film for me.
Is it? Okay.
Just oh my God. Again, it's not good. I wouldn't recommend the top 10 best films of all time. But if you just want to laugh and have a good time and laugh at ridiculous things,
sure.
Again, the choices made are not high quality. They're schlocky, but it's God, it's so much fun. Okay, and the banter is fantastic. Grade A banter with Kurt Russell.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you were able to watch it. How old's your son?
14.
14. Okay. So that's why you're a little bit tired at 6 a.m.
Yeah, we were. I think I went to bed about midnight. So
okay.
But I normally get up at 5 every day. So, I mean, my alarm went off as it normally does. And, dragging a little bit this morning, but not too bad. Not too bad.
Well, this time worked out great for me because it's 10 a.m. my time. Like, I'm up by this time anyway. But it's before when I would normally, like, start doing anything. Or at least, like, anything like, significant. So This time it worked out perfectly for me, but I was not like when I said I was flexible on my time for today, I was not expecting you to say, "All right, if you're flexible, how about 6 a.m.?"
So I just know, with the plans on the weekend and the in-laws and the wife, and if I don't do it and get it done early, it's the idea I'm going to run out of time today. There's no way I'm getting it
Okay,
done.
yeah, fair enough. Well, hopefully this won't take up too much of your time. I appreciate you helping me out with this, especially for the
Yeah,
very
brother.
first episode. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the little teaser that I put out there, but I guess a lot of people had a hard time having it load on their phone.
No, that wasn't a problem for me. I didn't. For me, it was more of a time issue. Every time I'd start to do it, something else would come up, and I heard a bit of it,
Sure.
but I didn't listen to the whole thing start to finish. But no, it loaded fine on my phone. Everything was fine, audio wise.
Okay, I think it goes to show like who has like a good phone and who doesn't, because like Joe told me that he just had to wait like 20 seconds and it loaded. I had mine loading for like a minute and a half, and then my phone shut off. The display the display just went black, and I had to like do it again. So it goes to show who has a semi decent phone and who doesn't. Because I know I'm in that latter category. How have you been though?
Great, great. Life's going well, work's going well. Just kind of getting, figuring out how to settle into this new business and really make it shine.
New business.
Other than that, yeah. So I was a bank manager for 10 years, and I became a financial advisor. And in that world, you kind of run your own business. It's not.
Oh, that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
the company pays me, but it's about bringing in clientele, and it really is like I run my own little office out of the back of the bank.
That makes sense,
So
yeah. Because I remember when we talked about it before, it sounded like you were going from one position within that company to a higher up position. But yeah, you're right. You have to kind of market yourself a little bit there,
yeah, absolutely.
as opposed to just
And
punching in.
right now is not the easiest time to market financial market-based products. People are freaking out a little bit with the economy and all the stuff going on.
That kind of makes sense. You slightly bad timing on that, but hey, it's better
It's
better
all right.
now than waiting some time to do it.
Right. My clients are gone. So.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
What about you? How are things going with you?
Things are going all right. This is the first time where I've had like a bit of a break in a good little while. I graduated. I have my graduation coming up in a week, but I'm not certified yet, so I'm not allowed to work until like the middle of August. So I have like that lull period of my internships being finished, but I'm not allowed to work yet either. So I just have like 2 months where I'm just not allowed to do anything. So it's long enough that it makes sense to try to look for like some type of like summer work, but it's short enough that no one wants to hire you.
Right, because they know you're not going to be there for any
like so I'll send in resumes and I'll be doing everything and they're saying like, yeah, like you sound like a great candidate to work at Starbucks, but we would rather this 18-year-old kid come in because he's going to be here for 2 years. You're going to be here for a month and a half. So it's like, all right, yeah, that's kind of fair.
So, yeah, that's kind of, you got to find something almost under the table, right?
Bit.
Just to, yeah.
So I quickly went from being picky to just mass sending out emails to people, kind of like Will at trade season.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Just
Will.
Yeah.
God, that guy's funny.
He definitely is. Yeah. So it's synonymous with that, where someone will just send out the same trade offer to everyone to see who bites, and that's what I'm doing with resumes right now. Except I'm getting all rejections.
Rough. You'll figure it out. So what's your specialty? What is it you're doing in your field?
Yeah.
What's your degree?
So I'm going to be a chiropractor, but I'm specializing in whiplash, motor vehicle injuries, scapulothoracic type injuries itself. So concussion-based injuries. So that's where I focus my specialty on. So that's where I've done like the large portion of my research, and that's the clientele that I'm going to be seeing for the most part. So
right on.
It's hard because whenever I tell somebody that I'm going to be a chiropractor, they're like, "Oh yeah, my lower back, you got to help me." I'm like, "Oh, go see one of my colleagues. I rarely treat
right. not my specialty, son.
Exactly. So it's if I'm forced to take the full 2 months off, hey, so be it. I get to watch some of those movies that you're going to recommend, but and I'll be fine soon. It's just that weird moment where I just see my wife going to work and me staying at home and saying, "All right, have a good day."
I'll email you a list.
Perfect.
Of movies worth watching.
Perfect. If you're all right with it, you want to get right into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we have what is it? 3-time runner-up? Did you say? 4-time runner-up.
4.
We have
in a row.
4-time runner-up from 2012 to 2016. In the original out of the box leagues itself, where we only had 16 teams, and then we branched off to having 32 teams, and someone who has been a committee member since the beginning, and someone who's been at the beginning of our league since the very beginning, since 2012, Mr. Jonathan Townley.
Good morning.